The world can seem upside down at times, which has set me on a journey in search for love, truth, and ultimately personal freedom. I'm on a mission to help people find peace and healing so that each of us as individuals and ultimately the collective can be free from whatever keeps us stuck and skews our view of just how beautiful this life can be. Welcome to the Lucas Mack Show. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another episode of the Lucas Mack Show. I am Lucas Mack, and I appreciate you joining me on this journey. This episode is a fantastic episode with Justin Atherton. I love this brother. He is so fascinating, incredibly smart, and he coaches men on leadership and emotional intelligence, but he coaches this episode applies way more than to just men. It applies to all of us, and self-awareness, understanding who we are, how we show up. We talk about microaggressions. We talk about emotional intelligence and leadership. This is a great episode. And also, one of the coolest things that Justin has done in the past couple of years, he's a police officer and he joined this police versus firefighter boxing match. I got to bring my son to an official boxing match. And unfortunately, Justin didn't make it because he got hurt at the last second. But I love this brother. And so without further delay, here's Justin. All right, brothers and sisters, like I just said, the juggernaut himself, Justin Atherton. Brother, how you doing? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great, man. I'm glad to be back on your show, brother.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. I just remarked, my son and I were talking about boxing. We love watching boxing, and I've got to bring him, even though he didn't fight that night. That was a cool experience. So we were talking about it the other day.
Yeah. I wish I was able to go through with the boxing. What Lucas is talking about, it was a charity event between police officers and firefighters that were fighting each other for charity, and I got myself injured right before that, but it was still a good cause and a great time with everybody. So the juggernaut, yeah, I didn't get to don that officially, but
I still rep you. I got your shirt. I still wear it. It's great. Oh man, I'm so glad you're on, man. It's I was thinking about you today in prep for this podcast, how cool it is that you and I had met through Johnny L. Sasser. We had connected online and we did a podcast while I was living up in Seattle, did an episode together.
Yeah.
And then I get invited, my family gets invited to go to this barbecue place after we moved down to Texas. And then you messaged me on Instagram, hey, I saw someone that looked like you down here. And I was like, that was actually me, man.
It was the weirdest thing because I almost went up to you, right? I was there with my dad. We were picking up some food for the family because I had some family in. And I see you and some people walk in. I'm like, man, that guy looks like this guy Lucas, that I chatted with once. And I'm telling my dad about this. I'm like, man, he really looks like it, but it can't be him. I mean, the guy lives in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I blew it off. But I was like, when I got home later, it was still in my head. I'm like, man, it looked exactly like Lucas. So I was like, let me send him a message. And he's like, well, that was me. I was like, oh crap. I'm like, I should have walked up and said something, man. But
dude, it's great though. I'm so glad. I mean, it's so cool how life works, man. How you and I connect. You're living in Texas, I'm in Seattle, and then moved down here. We've become brothers down here in person, get to hang out and
you initially were right down the street.
Yeah, I know. That was fun. That was fun. Now Texas is so big, Dallas area is so big that I'm like a world away, it feels like.
Yeah.
Man, I'm glad to have you on. You're stepping back into coaching, which is needed. I feel like your content every time. I haven't been on social media as much. I haven't posted content really in a long time, but when I get on, I see it's like very inspiring. Like I feel like, all right, let's go. Like it's go time. I feel that kick and that fire, which feels really good. But before we get into coaching, like why don't you fill everyone in on just your background? You mentioned obviously for the boxing, police, and firefighter, but those who
Sure.
haven't heard the first episode a while back.
Yeah, so I've been in law enforcement for just over 18 years. I've done all the cool guy stuff, right? I was on the SWAT team, I've been a detective, I've been in leadership roles in every aspect. My favorite part throughout law enforcement has always been like the training and development,
Hmm.
whether that was like one-on-one with the officers in the field training program, or teaching groups of officers, whether it was defensive tactics or wellness and resilience, emotional intelligence. That's a tough one for cops to grab a hold of, but that is a topic I teach. And then also different leadership classes, which that's how I've transitioned into a coach, taking all of the training and leadership skills and then working one-on-one with men in that capacity to share that. Man, that's what fires me up. Whether it's a group of people to get up in front of and like be able to teach something, or that one-on-one, like I don't know, man. It initially it seemed like a weird transition to go from a police officer to doing coaching, but I think with the skill set and just all of the life experiences, it's more of an easy transition than you would initially think, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, plus you're faced with the most stressful, heightened human experiences on a consistent basis. So
Mhm.
if you can rise through and find that emotional intelligence and the inner, understanding of yourself
Yeah.
and translate that to help other people, I mean, that's how many people get in stressful situations and they have no emotional intelligence or understanding, and all of a sudden they just blow up or they say something stupid or they act or they retreat. They just don't have enough fortitude. And so no, I think it's beautiful, man, that you took something so intense and transferred it to something so beautiful.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. I've done a lot of research over the years on human behavior and human development, always trying to figure out like how can I teach these things? Because there's always aspects of like it was this nature or nurture. Like how
Mhm.
did we get these skills? I've always tried to transfer over my level of awareness and my reaction time, and there's always a disconnect because I think like it's hard to beat life experience
Yeah.
and things that you've grown up with, environments that we've grown up in really
Mm.
impact us. And so it's a weird line. There are certain skills that like yes, I can teach this to anybody, but there are certain skills that it's like it's almost your values and beliefs that get in the way
Yeah.
of absorbing some of these skill sets.
I heard a quote the other day. I was listening to, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast, and the guy said, um, humility is the absence of admitting, or humility is the absence of thinking you're always right.
Hmm.
And thinking you're always right is the absence of humility. And he was like, people live in like those two spectrums. Either people are like humble and where new information can come be presented to us, and we're like, maybe I don't know everything, maybe I'm not always right, and you take the humble approach, or people double down on I'm always right or I think I know everything, and then we miss the opportunity. So it seems like what you're saying, the nature versus nurture, we always, if we double down on, well, I know, oh, you
Do
might
you?
not know. Yeah.
Well, I literally was just having a portion of this conversation earlier today because it is a huge driving force for all humans to be right, right?
Hmm.
So I think that we have that. Even people that say, I'm very humble, like, hey, prove me wrong. I think there's certain aspects of our lives that we're still like, no, I'm right. Like you could
Hmm.
be a very, very humble person in the
Yeah.
majority of aspects of your life, but you're gonna have one or two areas where you're like, no, no, I'm right, and you won't get off of it. So I think that even people that are the majority humble, like I feel like I am. Like when I come into a
Yeah.
leadership situation, I'll ask my team, I'm like, hey, what am I missing? Hey, tell me when I'm wrong, right? Like, I'm not the smartest person in the room. That's why we're all here together to make the best collective decision.
Yeah.
But I know that there's certain aspects where, like, no, I'm right. Like, I know I have to get off of it.
Right.
But it's such a huge driving force within human behavior to want to be right.
You know, it's interesting. I think I've shared this with you. I'm sure I have. One of my favorite quotes is, and I say it on this podcast so often, people are probably tired of hearing it, but A.W. Tozer said, "A man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument."
Mhm.
And so it's like if you experience something, it doesn't matter if someone logically like argues it away or tries to persuade you off of it. That experience is more real than any argument. But I think what you're saying, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, if we're not open to new experiences, that's where also it's like a trap. It's like some people can have a theory or an opinion of something they've never experienced, and no one really listens to those type of people. That's
Yeah.
usually found in religion, or institutions of higher education or whatever. But then there's those of us who have had real experiences, and then we formulate an idea or a worldview or a belief structure, but without understanding that it was the experience itself, and there's more experiences available for us. So to keep growing and learning and putting ourselves out there and trying new things, some people have an experience and just stop and say,
Yeah.
this is it.
I like the idea, just be curious.
Yeah.
Because if you're curious, it's difficult to get upset, right? If someone's trying to argue with you, to me, I'm like, well, explain your viewpoint or explain your experience,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
I can hear what you have to say and ponder it in my head rather than saying, "Oh, you're wrong and I'm right," right? We get in this back and forth of who's right and wrong, which I think everyone knows that's the type of conversations that are going on lately. You're either on
Right.
one side of the fence or you're not.
Right.
Why not be curious? Okay, well, what makes you say that? Or
Mm.
how did you get that belief? Or how long have you believed that?
Right.
Right? And what I find is when you start asking those questions, that person has never asked themselves those questions.
Mm.
So they have these beliefs and these values and these ideas and concepts that they've never gone past surface level.
Right.
Well, someone told me and I just know it to be true, or that's what my parents did, or that's what my friends, agree with. I do this with my daughter all the time. She tells me an idea or a concept, and I'm like, okay, well, where did that come from? Well, how
That's
do you feel about it?
yeah.
Have you thought about the repercussions of that? Well, what's the other side? So if you just enter every experience with the idea like I'm going to be curious,
Yeah. That's
like
so
what do I have to learn here? I think that's the best way to approach it. And you may come away with nothing, and you may
yeah.
go, "Yeah, I was really curious about your point of view. I heard it, I listened to it.
Yeah.
It's still a load of crap, but at
Yeah.
least maybe you gave it a shot, right? You
Yeah.
at least gave it a shot."
Right. Dude, that's funny. Especially like before we hit record, saying that it feels like no one knows what to believe anymore. Like it feels
Mhm.
like there's this disillusion or dissolving of beliefs. I know I'm at this point in so many things, brother. 8 years ago, like people have heard me talk about this, but I was such a prolific Christian preacher and led hundreds of people to Jesus. And I was like a verbal assassin. And like I I, I was so into that world. And now I'm like, man, it feels like a jacket that doesn't fit anymore. And it's been presented back to me in certain ways and people that haven't changed at all. And I feel like I've changed lifetimes since that space. And I'm not anti it. I'm just saying that it's just interesting to like be presented with something. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I told my daughter the other day, I took her out to breakfast, my oldest, and I said, you can ask me anything. Like, I want you to come to this breakfast and ask me anything. And so we had great conversations. And I said, part of Cam, what you got to say in a position you take is just maybe,
Yeah.
maybe this, maybe, I don't know, maybe. unless I saw it firsthand, experienced it firsthand, like you're saying, where'd you get the idea from? I've even shared earlier today with buddies. I got to show this. Um, it's so crazy because this is how we get tricked. I don't know if you can see it says uh making of the world's first camera, and then it goes, who the fuck took that picture then? And it's like that's so how it is, right? We would
Yeah.
believe like, oh wow, that's a making of the first camera. Like, they say if Neil Armstrong was the first person on the moon who was running the video camera or something like that. Like, I don't
Hmm.
want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying,
I think
stuff like
there's so
that's
many
funny.
ways
Right.
that it, and everyone is questioning like what's real and what's not, right? Like I don't even want to watch television, especially the news, because you don't know what to believe. You don't
Right.
know what you're hearing is real, especially with all the AI. There's a whole rabbit hole to go down with
Yes.
AI and
Yes.
videos and voices and sounds and whatnot. Um, but it almost seems like people are starting to crave that authenticity, right? It's like I just want something real. I don't want somebody to sell me something.
Yes.
I don't want somebody to tell me what they think I need to know. Like just be real. Just have a conversation with me,
Right.
and I need to be able to feel that that's coming across.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out there that feel like they have to act a certain way in certain situations, and to me it's kind of sad,
Hmm.
but I think that in some way in our society that's pushed,
Yeah.
like when you become a leader or when you become a parent or when you're in different roles, people talk different, they act different, right? And sometimes that's relevant. I'm not going to say that context doesn't, change us, right? When we're with the boys, we're going to talk a little bit different
Right.
than if we're at like a fancy dinner, right? We
Exactly.
have to
Yeah.
change for the context,
Yeah.
but it's still a piece of you and a shade of you, rather than saying, well, I have to be somebody different.
Hmm.
I had this question. I love to share this because I think it's so relevant. And one of the agencies I worked for, I was promoting to sergeant, and one of the officers stopped me in the hallway. He was, "Hey, how's it going? Congratulations." He's like, "What are you going to do differently now that you're promoting?"
Hmm.
And I looked at him and I said, "I'm going to polish my boots more."
Hmm.
And he kind of looked at me with a surprised look on his face, like, "Oh." And I could tell I had to follow through with an explanation. I said, "Look, man," I said, "I'm already doing the things that I need to do as a supervisor. I'm just going to be taking on a different role and different responsibilities.
Hmm.
I'm not going to change. The person who I am
Right.
and how I am being is not going to change. Do I need to set a little bit of a better example and polish my boots? Sure.
Right.
But the core person that I am is not going to change."
Hmm. That's good. How have you because I know we were just talking about the officers and like the emotional intelligence, where it's not like a primary thought of like bringing that in traditionally to law enforcement. But how have you, like, what's a story or a scenario where you've been able to use those skills that you've developed and learned and that you teach, either with other officers or with someone on a scene that you're able
Mm.
to de-escalate?
Yeah, a lot of it, interestingly enough, a lot of the emotional intelligence and rapport building skills are very good at helping you interview suspects
Mm,
and witnesses and victims. So slightly different context there. But I would say, as far as like the leadership concept, it helps with understanding your team and different things that they're going through. So one that really stands out for me was we responded to the scene of it was a fatality accident.
mm,
And I was a supervisor on scene, a couple officers were there, and the senior officer, I could tell, I kept seeing like some sadness. Like
mm,
everyone, like she's dealing with the scene. And I've seen her deal with other death scenes before, and I never saw it bother her. And I saw it pop up a few times, and I was like, something's wrong.
mm,
So I pulled her to the side and I said, "Hey," I said, "Are you good?" And she's like, She's like, yeah. She's like, going through his stuff. I found his military ID. He's a Marine, and she was like, I'm a former Marine, and so it
Mm,
was hitting her different, right?
yeah.
And so I was like, look, I said, I can get you relieved if this thing's bothering you. I can have someone else take primary on that. And she's like, no, no, I'm good. But I think leaders miss out on those moments,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If we're not able to read each other, read our team members, and go, something's off with them, whether it's at home or at the job, if we're not picking up on those things and we don't have that self-awareness of our team, then we're hanging them out to dry,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
they're not operating at 100%. They're distracted, and so, man, sometimes you just got to send somebody home, or
Mm,
you got to, tell them, hey, go take a break. You're good. I'll cover your work for right now. I'll cover your job. You get your head right,
mm,
and then we'll come back at it at 100%.
man, that's good. That's powerful. It's almost like situational awareness. It's like inner understanding, like knowing ourselves, but also
Mhm.
like understanding how other people work. I've always I've had this saying since I was in high school. I said normal people don't weird you out. Only weirdos weird you out. So if someone weirds you out, it's because they're a weirdo. Like you got to trust that. And I on a very small scale, like you knew she wasn't in a normal situation because you had seen her with normal. So you honored the abnormal and like dug in. And I think so many of us just ignore uh, the abnormal and play it off or don't investigate that. And we
Mhm.
miss an opportunity to have a real human experience with one another or that senior officer. Like I bet she felt validated as a human, not just as the title of her role and playing that. So that's powerful, brother.
Yeah, it takes a level of awareness, right? Like when I teach classes on emotional intelligence, there's there's foundational pieces, and then they have to move up, because if you don't have the self-awareness of how you feel and your emotional states,
Mm,
you're not going to be able to read anyone else.
right.
So like base level is establishing that emotional vocabulary and really, expanding that so you can articulate the emotional states that you're in, which gives you that level of self-awareness. So
Mm,
then you can manage your own emotions and emotional states.
right.
Then you start being aware of everyone else. And once you're able to build that rapport with them, then you're able to manage their emotional states and build that rapport and build that trust. So it's just a step ladder all the way up through the skills of emotional intelligence.
What's at the height of like when you're coaching and doing your leadership training, is there like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or is there something where you're saying the building blocks are self-awareness? What's at the top?
Well, depends on the context.
Uh-huh.
So if it's a leadership context, it's trust. If
Hmm.
it's interview interrogation context, the above trust is deception detection.
Hmm. That's good.
So
That's
that's a whole different
I
conversation.
remember we were at coffee one time. We were talking about like micro movements in the face and stuff.
Yeah.
I was great. I just tried to go stone cold on you.
Yeah.
I
And people think they can do it. It doesn't work like that,
know.
right?
Right.
But yeah, the micro expressions in the face, which are universal, no matter, every human on the planet has certain micro expressions that they express. But if you're not building that rapport and that trust with someone,
Right.
you're not going to pick up on that abnormal behavior, because you hit the nail on the head when you said that. Like, whether it's family or friends or a stranger, we're looking for the changes in behavior, that
Yeah.
abnormal behavior that goes, something's wrong with that. That's
Right.
not normal. This is outside of the pattern that I should be observing right now.
Yeah. It's powerful. My buddy who is 10-year medically retired Navy SEAL, he was the one that was teaching me about situational awareness
Hmm.
and I was telling him about, yeah, normal people don't weird you out, only weirdos weird you out. Someone weirds you out because they're a weirdo. And he was laughing. It was kind of a joke, but I've always thought that like normal people don't make you feel some sort of way. And so if someone makes you feel some sort of way, it's like keep an eye on those people. And he was explaining that the majority of victims in crime have an awareness that something's not right, and then they overwrite it in themselves, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm being judgmental or I'm being ridiculous. And then they'll put themselves in a situation where they turn their back and something happens. And
Yeah.
so that's obviously that's an external scenario, but it all stems from, I think, this self-awareness inside of us. And really, you're saying trust, it's also trusting ourselves, which are probably most people don't. Well, I don't think people trust themselves because they're
Mm.
unsure. Maybe they have insecurities that stem from being told from as a child, you're stupid or dumb, or you got beat, and you're like some self-worth issues that they don't know if they can trust themselves.
Yeah, I think some of that's contextual too, right? Because, based on your competencies and what you're prepared for in life and your experience, right?
Yeah.
Like I trust myself in a lot of different areas, but I probably wouldn't trust myself to bake a cake that you would like. I'm like, I
Right.
haven't prepared for that.
Right.
I've never done that before. I'm sure I
Right.
could like fumble through a recipe book and make something that was edible. It wouldn't be
Right.
pretty by
Right.
any fashion,
Right.
right? So I don't trust myself in certain aspects, but that's just
Mm.
from a lack of experience. But on the deeper level, yes, I think you're right. Based on trauma that people have dealt with in the past,
Yeah.
it can affect the trust in their own abilities.
Yeah.
Maybe they have had a history of failure in certain aspects, and they're like, well, I don't want to experience that again, so I'm just going to avoid it instead of attempting another time. So
Yeah.
trust is an interesting concept, especially when you talk about that self trust.
Yeah. It is interesting. Also, too, I think um I gave this talk. I used to give a lot of keynote talks, and I gave this talk before Macklemore and Ryan Lewis came on stage for this benefit concert years ago in Seattle, and no one wanted to hear me. Everyone wanted to hear him. I wanted to hear him, so I tried to make it a quick talk. But I asked the crowd. I said, at one time in your life, when you were younger, did anyone ever make you feel this way or say this to you? Who do you think you are? You think you're better than me?
Mm.
Who do you think? Who do you think you are? Who? And I said it. The crowd. One guy goes, "Thanks, Dad." And I wish I would have said, "Hey, you and I have the same dad." Um, but I asked the crowd to raise their hand. I was like, "Raise your hand if anyone's ever said this to you or made you feel this way." And a couple hands go up. I go, "No, really, do it. Raise your hand." So there was, I don't know, 1,500 people, close to 2,000 people at this concert. It was the most people I'd ever asked this question to in a talk. And all of a sudden, a sea of hands go up, and it was really emotional. I got like this moment because, and I told the crowd, I said, "Look around." Look around right now. Everyone's kind of looking around like this is the most human experience that we all have. But we're one time, maybe didn't say it to us, but people make you feel like, they kind of flex on you, like, who the hell do you think
Mm.
you are? And I said, what was our first response? Was it to say, get out of my way, I'm going to keep going? Or is it to say no and retreat back into the faceless, nameless crowd? I said, the majority of us said no. And it's those who can step back into that. So talking about self-trust and it kind of relating it back to, yes, it's leadership with other people, but we really got to learn how to lead ourselves out of that darkness too. And so that's what's
Mhm.
so beautiful about you're saying trust is the highest pinnacle for leadership, and self-leadership is just as important. You're saying self-awareness is the foundation, internal and external with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Man, that sounds like it was a powerful
It
moment to
was,
ask
it
that
was, it
question,
was
right?
cool. It was cool. Yeah.
Man, that's wow.
And then Macklemore got on stage like, I'm gonna pop some tags. We got 20. Yeah,
And they forgot all about it,
that's
and
right.
they
They
just
don't care anymore. Yeah.
that you asked such a powerful question. It's like, man, oh, let me think about this. Boom,
Yeah.
no, gone
Yeah. Yeah. It
forever.
was gone. It was gone. But it gives me a good story to share later on in life. Yeah. Yeah. So
That's
tell me
awesome.
about I mean you're stepping, I know you've been coaching and leading seminars and trainings and workshops, but now you're stepping into it right now in a
Mhm.
powerful way. How does that for you? How does it feel?
It's good because I did, put it on the back burner for a little bit and was still teaching and doing that aspect. But as far as the one-on-one coaching, I did set that to the side. And honestly, this is what sets me on fire, man. Like every time I get an opportunity to have a conversation one-on-one, or if it's a group of people, like I love it. And I know like how I walk away from that, I'm like, man, that was great. Like it's such a hard thing to articulate for myself, right? Because
Mm.
in the moment, it's just you almost end up in that flow state, right? Where you're not even remembering what you talk about. You're putting out the content, and it's
Yeah.
just it's going, and then afterwards, you're like, man, that felt good. You
Mm.
know, let me do it again. Let's see how else we can impact. And the best part is like hearing the feedback, whether it's like feedback stuff that gets mailed in, or having people reach out and go, man, hey, this was the best, class of this retreat or this seminar. I'm like, that's such a great feeling. And so I am leaning really heavy into the coaching right now, because I know that this is where my passion is, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting.
Right.
you know it, I know that it's my purpose to help other people be the best versions of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's cool, brother, is just an acknowledgement for you. You have strong masculine, like you're a warrior, you're a butt kicker, you are the juggernaut. You're bigger, stronger. You're just a stud in that way, but you're also incredible. For guys, you're safe, you're big, so we respect all those physical attributes of you, but you're also a safe space. You don't judge, and you're really a loving brother, and it's cool to see you package all that together, because I'm sure men need to respect the person that they open up to, and you are
Sure.
that for tons of men, and I hope from listening to this podcast tons more, because that's so important.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like I wasn't always like that.
Mm.
Like I share a little bit of my story. Man, early on in my career, I mean, I was a jerk,
Mm.
right? Like I was one of those guys that like I worked my ass off. Like you had to respect me, but you probably didn't like me. And
Yeah.
if you weren't on my level, I didn't give you the time of day. I'm
Mm.
like, you're in my way. You're worthless. Like, hey, get off my scene. I had this weird expectation that I felt everybody had to meet.
Mm.
And it took me, stepping away from the job for a short time to realize that I had my identity wrapped up in my career.
Mm.
And I had this moment where I didn't know if I was going to get back into law enforcement at the time, and like I was super depressed, and I was like what am I going to do? Like this is all I've known. You know,
Mm.
I've been in this career for so many years. I'm like I can't do anything else. And then it hit me, and I'm like, man, with the skill set that I have built,
Mm.
you know, I can do whatever the hell I want to.
Yeah.
And so it was that moment where I was able to separate my identity from my career, which I think a lot of men have issues with, right? Like
I
I
did.
am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I
Yep.
am whatever that is.
Yep.
But that is the moment that sparked me to like go to different conferences and seminars and learn about self-development
Mm.
and learn these different tools and techniques, because they are like withholding judgment is a skill set that I teach in leadership, right?
Mm.
It has to be taught,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's not really ingrained into who we are always.
Right.
So suspending judgment, being able to have empathy and practice empathy,
Mm.
right? Because I'll say like I was not an empathetic person. Like I was like, oh, that's your problem. That's what you're going to complain about. Well, that's not efficient. Let's
Yeah.
move on.
Right.
That's probably what led to my divorce. Was like, having that kind of conversation with the wife, that's not
Yeah.
very productive, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that I
I
have
don't know if you
since
were raised. I don't know if you were raised like this, but I was always told, "I'll give you something to cry about," and I was like, "Oh
I
shit!"
mean, yeah, I do
Oh
recall hearing that every.
shit. Yeah.
So some of us weren't raised with that ingrained into us,
Right.
but those soft skills, they're learnable,
Yeah.
right? Like we can know how to be empathetic in certain situations. We
Mm.
can learn how to withhold judgment. We can learn how to ask better questions, like all of these things that build into being that great leader,
Mm,
whether it's at home or at work, right? Because
yeah.
we're leaders in both realms,
Right.
okay?
Right.
But those are all skill sets that you can learn.
Mm. Who in your journey has spoken most to you? Was there, did you go to a seminar and there was someone in particular, or was it just the body of work that you were learning, or was there one individual that you were like, man, that guy really, I respect that guy and he really gets it?
Man, that's a great question because I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great leaders and mentors over the year, and I still do. Um, and I've also had the opportunity to be around a lot of bad leaders
Yeah,
and
I know.
mentors.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like I have equally learned from both.
Hmm.
Man, who would I say is the most impactful? I'm not sure. Like I I I I come from the idea where I'm like I want multiple mentors at the same time.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I like to reach out to multiple people like, "Hey, what do you think about this? What about this?" And maybe certain mentors for certain topics,
Right.
right? And so to me, like I like the idea. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the smartest person around. Like I'm going to ask somebody else that's been there, done it before, right? Learn from them. Maybe I'm only going to take one little piece from what they told me, but I'm still being that curious person, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you've got something to teach me. I don't know what it is yet,
Hmm.
but hey, teach me something.
Yeah.
Or my favorite way to reach out to a mentor is like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about this. Tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me
Hmm.
why I'm wrong. And some people will give me like a great um perspective on it, and it's like, well, have you thought about it from this point, or maybe the other person, they're thinking this, and I'm like, I don't enjoy your answer, but it's a good answer.
Yeah. Right. Right. Dude, that's good. It's yeah, the positive, like I'm at this new job in this company, and report directly to the president, and I'm learning a lot from this guy. He's a cool dude. He rolls. I like how he rolls. So I'm learning all of a sudden from someone again in a professional, that it's not like going to a class to learn something. I'm like real life learning from this guy. And I presented this opportunity to him, and I brought some other people in, because it wasn't really um, I wasn't going to make the call on this thing that I presented to the president. And he was like, he said, I'm great with it if you get everyone else to be great with it too. And I said, well, it's not really my initiative, but it was brought to me. I just want to get your thoughts. He's like, go socialize it. If other people are great with it, I'll back it. If not, maybe we hold on it. And and I liked it. I didn't have there was no ego for me. I was like, okay, cool. But the next day I had a one-on-one with him, and he said, everything's a great idea. And he goes, people will bring stuff to me all the time. And he goes, if I'm saying yes to every great idea, then that doesn't work. You really have to get the team involved. And when people feel like they're invested in an idea, then I was like,
Mm,
man, that's wisdom from a king. That's what I felt like. Like everything's a great idea, but have you socialized it? Have you gotten other people's feedback? And for me, I took that nugget as like if I was at a workshop somewhere, it was
yeah,
like a new thing that I was like, oh, that's good. Because he was chill about it. He's like, and I was like, man, I want to roll that way. That's a cool way versus like I was so focused on is this idea, which was not even mine. A musician wrote a song, a hit song, actually a great song, about the company that I'm at, and so we want to know if we're going to license it or something. And the president said, "Hey, I want a song with our name in it."
mm,
So I made it happen, but it costs a lot of money. It was like almost three-quarters of $1 million to get all this stuff. Like, and so that's what the scenario was, where it was like, hey, I don't care if we do this or not. You asked for it, but he brought it back, and I'm like, man, that's it's a cool way to roll. And
yeah,
anyway, just getting off that subject of just good leaders and bad leaders and taking little nuggets to make us better leaders.
Yeah, I like that concept because it now certain things it's like, hey, this is the direction we need to go. But I like the idea when it's kind of a certain level of decision making. It's like, hey, let's involve the team,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and I want to hear everybody's ideas, and we're going to take the best one. It still might be my idea leading the meeting, right? But I
Yeah.
want input on this and how this is going to work. And then on maybe like very unimportant issues, it's like you hand it over to the team and be like, whatever, however you guys get this done, this is the end goal I want. How
Mm,
you get there, I don't care. Just take it. Just take
right.
it and run.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot of leaders really have an issue letting go of that control,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And delegating the different tasks because it's like, well, you're not going to do it exactly the way I was going to do it. You're right. But if the end goal is within a certain parameter that we set,
Yep. That's right.
what the heck is the difference?
Right. That's right. That's right. That's right. I mean, back to your cake analogy, tons of ways to bake a cake.
Yeah. But anyways,
You know?
they're all going to taste a little different.
Yeah, that's right. But at the end of the day, someone will get a cake.
Yeah.
Oh man. When you're putting, like I was saying, earlier, you're putting out a lot of content that's inspiring. Are you feeling like my observation of like the men's work, like 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago, like there was a lot of like men's work and men's groups, and like that's how Johnny L. Sasser and I got connected. And it was like, but everyone's kind of gone their own path or those have matured, but it feels like what you're doing is so needed because I feel like all these men got lost in all this stuff, and it's like not men's group or like groupings. I feel like everyone's an individual right now for the first
Mm,
time ever, like all know how to describe. I don't know what I'm trying to articulate lately, like what I'm observing, but it just feels like we're in a new space, kind of like we don't know what to believe, but also I don't know what to identify as, like, or what group I belong to, or so when you're talking about leadership, it's almost like this inner power, like calling guys forth. Do you feel that, or like, guess what's your take on that?
I kind of see what you're talking about. It's almost like it almost seems like every man for themselves,
It,
right? Like
yes,
everyone's just kind of like, hey,
yes,
I'm gonna figure this out. I think I got enough information. Like let me push through this, and because no one knows what to believe. I think everyone is very guarded right now,
yeah, I think that
and
might,
so it's like we take everything with a grain of salt because we're like, okay, I heard what you said. I'm gonna have to verify this because maybe I haven't heard this, or maybe it fits in this box over here
right.
that I'm plugging information into. So it does seem like men are very guarded right now. But again, we've been attacked for the last how
Yeah,
many decades,
yeah,
man?
right,
Like, and
right.
it almost seems like it's ramping up still. It
Yeah,
hasn't stopped.
right,
Men are still, oh, toxic masculinity and all the other silly terms
right,
that people want to throw out there at men, right? So we're just
right.
kind of hunkered down and going like, well, I'll figure this out.
Yeah,
But there is a detrimental side to that, right? Because we are afraid to reach out to people that we don't know. We're worried to reach out to these different mentors, and it's like, well, have you experienced anything more than I have? So men are a little bit more resistant to reach out to coaches and mentors than women are.
yeah,
Um, but that's just kind of our nature, right? We're a little guarded. Maybe if we, building those cultures like you said, Johnny does.
yeah,
But I'd say yes. Right now, men seem a little guarded.
yeah. That's a great way. That's it's a great articulation to it because that's what I'm feeling, and it's almost like we're going. I don't know how to describe it, but not to make it sound too wild, but it's like we're going through like a portal right now at like warp speed. It's like every day the news, the headlines, like everything is. It's so nuts. Like even I saw it tonight. I got to share this because it was so nuts. I'm like, um, everything is nuts. So if everything is nuts, what is, like we're
Yeah.
just like getting drugged through this insane time. And yet there's this beautiful return. People are farming again, like people that have no relationship to farming, like are homesteading and growing their own food and getting chicken coops. It's a
Yes.
beautiful contrast to what's happening. I think more people are going to start doing this, maybe out of necessity. If they say the bird flu is in everything, like I don't know, they scare everyone from buying the supply chain food that maybe, but I don't know, it's just a wild time.
It is weird, and I have seen that too because I get my eggs from somebody I work with. I'm
Yeah,
like, I'm like, great. Hey, I trust you more than I do, these other companies, right?
right,
I'm like,
right,
you're just growing them in your backyard, you having these chickens and
exactly.
picking up eggs
Yeah,
a couple times a week. I'm like, sure, I'll pay you a few bucks for some eggs.
yeah,
But yeah, it's like we're all trying to figure things out for ourselves because we don't trust anything,
right,
right? And so
right.
we're like, the only people I can trust are the ones like closest to me.
Yeah,
And so it's it's going to be interesting. Like, what are the repercussions of that?
it's a great question. I mean, I'm wondering what's on the other side. I've been talking about. I wrote this ebook last year called "Healing Our Soul to Find Our Light," and in it I talk about first comes truth, then comes healing. I kept having visions and hearing this: first comes truth, then comes healing. And 2024, I was like, this is the year of truth, like
Hmm.
crazy disclosures and all this weird stuff. But it seems like there's something on the other side of whatever we're going through. And I'm not saying everything we're experiencing is truth, but what is on the other side? What's it going to result in? It might, in one way, I'm like, man, it could be beautiful communities of people that figured it out. And just like we kind of reject this AI insanity that's happening. And we just be like, all right, we're going to grow our own food and go to work. Yes. But work is like, we have to go to work. We come back and we're like, versus go to work, still play the game, still believe the news, it's like people are getting
Always
lost in
plugged
that.
in, right?
Always plugged in. Yeah. So I don't know. It's such a wild time. And I think why I'm so glad we're doing this up. One of the reasons I'm glad, first of all, I love you. You're a brother and you're a warrior. But it's the right time to bring you back into this audience because people need leadership right now and they need coaches and they need um, a safe container to explore like who they are. And I encourage everyone listening to this, male or female, man or woman, um, if you know a guy that needs support, reach out to Justin, and I'll put your information in the show notes. And man, I hope so many people sign up, brother, because we need guides right now that just like hold, hold, brothers, hold. It's like don't fall apart, don't lose hope, don't get in despair. Just keep going and keep working on ourselves and keep growing. I think that's an important thing to go through right now.
Yeah, and I think my favorite part of it is knowing that everyone I work with, especially the one-on-one, like the feedback I get about how it affects their family, like the immediate
Mhm.
people around them, that's my absolute favorite part, right? Because, yeah, we got to lead ourselves first, and then next, right next to us is our family.
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
if it's hard to lead people outside the house if you're not taking care of what's going on, behind the doors.
That is right. How can people find you or follow you or how can people connect with you?
Yep. Best way is on social media. So on Instagram, Confidence Unchained. On Facebook, I'm pretty sure it's just Justin Atherton or Justin W. Atherton. Confidence Unchained will uh, get you there. Even on
Awesome.
LinkedIn as Justin Atherton and Confidence Unchained as well. So
Awesome. And I'll put all those links in the show notes. Brother, I love you, man. It's good to see you. I'm glad we got to do this. Thanks,
yes, sir.
everyone. Justin is man, everyone that's been listening to this podcast knows I've been going through it for the past couple of years with Lawrence Health and all that stuff. And I'm always thankful, man, when you reach out and I always, I'll tell you, like, dude, Anyway, I just appreciate you. When I'm like, I don't reach out as much, I'm sorry, man. You're like,
Oh,
dude, you're
I
just
get it.
you're a good brother, and I appreciate you. Really
Yeah.
do. Thanks, man.
I'm glad I can be there for you, man. Again, like I always offer, if you need something, man, let me know.
Thanks, brother. Well, everyone, go check out his website, sign up for his coaching, his program, Confidence Unchained. This man is powerful, as you can tell, and just a good brother. And so, Justin, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And everyone, like Justin and I were talking about, it feels like everything is unraveling, and it's so hard to know what to believe and what to feel. And this is just a reminder to continue to go within. When the world seems crazy without, continue to go within, ground yourself, and I just encourage all of you to reestablish or establish a relationship with the earth. Learn how to forage, learn how to grow plants and vegetables in your house, and really do what you can do in your vicinity, whatever your living quarters are. Nature is abundant, and God, who is the creator of this natural world, which is love, is inviting all of us to step into that. So that's my encouragement to you. I am Lucas Mack. This is the Lucas Mack Show, and thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. If you're struggling to break free and need support, go to my website at lucasmack.com. There you'll find resources like videos and ebooks, and also information on how to work with me for coaching. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon.